Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the RENNSPORT Founders League, and not only to a RENNSPORT Founders League race, but also to the 2.4 hours of the Nürburgring Nordschleife, an event I have been looking forward to for quite a long time now. And as usual, I'm not alone today in the booth because I'm joined by Tim Ireland.
Hello.
Kind of got this down now at this stage.
We're getting there. Practice makes perfect, or so they say.
Practice makes perfect, and practice also helps getting a good lap in, because we are right now in qualifying. We are watching Adrian Lunio in the Porsche. I think he should be the first car on track in private quali. This time also real private quali, so people shouldn't be bothered by others in this case. You've got 2 laps to set your valid lap time, and he already had a slowdown, which is quite interesting. However, yeah, of course, the starting position in this race, what do you think? Will it be more of an importance because you have less time, we've seen in the first race especially, or due to the longer race, will it be kind of unnecessary?
I don't think it's always good. I think if you're getting out first or second, then it's always good to have some nice clean track on the first lap. It's the Nürburgring 24-hour layout, so you want to minimize those risks as much as possible. I think, as usual, in my kind of qualifying theory is you either want to be at the front or at the back. What you don't want to be is in the middle.
And the middle being very dangerous in a way, even though it has been very clean up until this point in the RENNSPORT Founders
It
League.
has, yeah.
If we think back to the first race, there is a name who unfortunately isn't here today, which would be very interesting, but you know who started 14th in that first race?
I can't remember who started 14th in the first race.
Actually, it sounds like you can remember, but you don't want to spoil it. Well, that certain someone has driven an AMG, of which we have one today in the field, driven by Alizar. But of course, it was Tim Schroeder, and he did the Kevin Astro on that opening lap. Coincidentally, we have a driver named Kevin Astro here on the grid, even though I'm not sure if it's the actual Kevin Astro. But yeah, he kind of did a fantastic start, didn't he?
He did, yeah. It was a very good race start. So hopefully we can get a bit of a. It'd be nice to see a repeat of it today. Maybe.
Few more cars on the track as well than last time around. 21 signups here today. And we also have our 2 title contenders here, because, of course, this is the 2.4 of the Nordschleife, but it's also round 4 of the Founders League, meaning there are point standings, points up for grabs, and still a championship crown. Because if we take a look at the standings, you can see there's only 2 points separating Maximilian Dehn from this man in the BMW, Timothy Fritsch.
Yeah, it's become a very tight championship. So there could be some exciting racing ahead, and people have got a long time to concentrate tonight. So it'll be interesting to see how they all deal with it.
Yeah, very much. I mean, of course, Maximilian Dehn has been the dominant driver all season. He just had to miss last time's TCR race due to private reasons. And, well, Timothy Fritsch used that opportunity, got close to him. He is a very consistent driver, although he doesn't really have the speed as Maximilian Dehn has, but still he can walk out of this championship sitting comfortably in second place.
And with a longer race like this, consistency means a lot. So it's definitely a good place to be in, and it's always better to have points than not have them. So yeah, he's got a fairly safe second place right now, and I'm sure with a consistency we'll come to expect from Timothy Fritsch, then he should be doing pretty well by the end of the race.
Yeah, very much indeed, as we see some support for this driver, Lucas Mint. Brazil, fans from Brazil always being very supportive, as we've seen with the likes of Kike Oliveira in ESL as well, which is always nice to see. And so far it's not looking bad for him. First 3 sectors that we can see, pretty good, so let's see what he can do on this lap. He has a second one, as does everybody else. So this first one probably just to put a banker in. Your lap won't get invalidated if you go off track, but you will get a 5-second slowdown, so you will drop down the order quite significantly if you slip up across the track, just as the 12 car does right now. That was Bräuniger, actually. He changed the name a bit because, possibly because of the last RFL race.
I couldn't possibly comment.
Possibly it has to do with Tim's pronunciation.
Well, I was making a perfect pronunciation of his name. How dare you? I apologize to everybody in advance.
However, Enrico Bräuniger, he is a very strong contender, I think. He was very good in the GT4 race.
He was, yeah. He was very strong. So hopefully, I keep saying hopefully today, but I'm sure he's going to put on a decent performance today.
I'm also very curious to see what Adrian Lunio can do here today. He's won the last race in the TCR, even though it wasn't as clear-cut as man might have thought. But very fast driver. Has given us tons of good racing moments.
He's had a bit of a sketchy qualifying lap so far. I did see him spin earlier on. He had a bit of a meeting with Barrier, but yeah, he's got another one, and he can always get. Hopefully, I said it again. Hopefully, he didn't invalidate his lap, so he can at least carry on and set a time.
He also got the slowdown early in the lap. As said, you don't invalidate your lap, as it's now getting onto the Döttinger Höhe for the likes of Joachim Thunder, who's also, I think, sitting in 4th in the championship, still with some points together. And he's been good in the first race. Very strong driver as well. We know him very well at this stage, but I mean, it would be kind of a feel-good story for him to finish off this season strong.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of drivers out there who are looking forward to having a strong finish to the season. It's always good to feel like you've ended on a high. One of our other well-known drivers, Ali Zahir, had some technical problems, so couldn't log in until after qualifying had started. So he will be right at the back of the grid. So he's got a fight on his hands.
Meanwhile, we see the first lap times come in. Remco Major currently on top of the timing sheets with a 8:058, followed by Dominik Ladler and Eric Häusler, who's also had a good race last time in the TCRs. So that's already an interesting start to the season. Joachim Thunder actually already finished qualifying. I'm not sure if he didn't know there was a second lap, but maybe he was satisfied with his first lap. That's something to figure out in between the sessions. Maximilian Dehn down in 6th. That is a bit of a surprise.
I'm sure he's just putting in a bit of pressure on himself to try and ramp up the tension. He maybe had a bit of an iffy first lap, but it's always, like you were saying before, it's always good to set a banker lap earlier on and then go from there.
I mean, that right now puts him just a spot ahead of Timothy Fridge. Just saying at this stage. But yeah, already 800 up on Remco Major on the first sector. I'm sure Remco will also be getting a few more tenths out of his lap. What I find interesting is that Maximilian Dehn has changed cars from the AMG, which he's driven in the first race, now to the Porsche. Of course, in the GT4 class, he has driven the BMW, but it's the closest car we have currently in the GT4 class to the AMG.
Yeah, it's a very big change from his usual front engine cars to go all the way to the back. So So that could be an interesting choice for him.
Look how closely the sectors are matched. Sector 2, 100 down on Remco Major.
I don't know, he's maybe feeling like he needs a bit of an extra challenge, so he's gone for a car he's less familiar with. He might be regretting that later on. We'll see.
Meanwhile, our 3 Audis we have in the race, 8th, 9th and 10th, all closely packed together, led by Felix Horn.
Yeah, there's a lot of Porsche. It's mainly Porsche dominance going on here today, but there's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 BMWs.
Would have been interesting to see what Alizar could have done with his qualifying lap. I mean, he's 3rd in the championship. That can tell you already a lot you need to know about him, but he's very fast. We've talked about it a couple of times in the race, how much he improved. What do you reckon could he do from starting now P19?
He is very quick when he gets moving. He's one of our kind of more considerate drivers. So it'll be interesting to see how much he can ramp up the aggression for that first lap and really start taking places, because he's got a lot of cars between him and the top of the leaderboard, which I know is where he's going to want to be. So he's going to have to push, and I think we're going to have to see a different side of him, I think, in the first couple of laps.
You know what surprises me?
A fish that can talk.
I mean, it would, yeah, but I haven't seen that right now.
Alright, okay.
We are already 60 minutes and 50 seconds into the stream, and we haven't even mentioned this man right here, Dominic Ladler, the highest ranked driver out of them all in this session. Therefore, he bears the number 1 on his car. And still, we haven't mentioned his name yet. That's just to show you how stacked this grid today is. I mean, we also haven't mentioned Nico Kuppel, for instance, who's also one of the guys that have very strong performances from time to time.
Yeah, there are a few wild cards in there that can definitely do the pace. It's just a matter of stringing it all together, which are especially difficult over a 2.4-hour race like today. So, but yeah, there could well be some interesting names making their way to the front, or maybe a few wildcard pit strategies to throw in there.
Now, before this race, before qualifying, better said, we talked to Lukas Bender, of course, and to this man, Remco Major. And Remco reckoned he couldn't fight Maximilian Dehn today. Do you think Remco Major did the Lukas Bender, saying that he can't compete and is going to absolutely fight it out with Maximilian Dehn? And Dominic Ladler.
I think he might be being a bit modest there. I know Remco and Maximilian Dehn regularly kind of have battles in the time trial boards. So he's definitely around the same pace. So it can make for an interesting race for having those two both on track at once.
Even more fan support for Lukas Mint. He's sure got a lot of people behind his back.
It's good to see.
So let's see. He's on a good lap as it seems. Of course, those 4 seconds in the first sector hurt a bit, but long track, a lot of time to make up for it. Could still well be in the top 8, I reckon.
Sorry, I was answering someone with Discord.
As long as you don't do the Remco and just ignore me, repeat what I said.
No, I couldn't possibly say that about the 8th position. Yeah, I think I'm going to agree with you there. There's some fairly interesting times coming in right now.
You're also watching Maximilian Dehn, don't you?
I've been watching Maximilian Dean a little bit. I'm not sure how the overlay deals with this many sectors, because I haven't seen a sector 4 come up on it so much. But his sector 3 time is definitely fairly impressive.
Indeed. Remco will be the first one to cross the line for a second time. I reckon it will be an improvement.
Yes, yeah, I agree. An 8:05 is by no means a slow time around Nürburgring, but I think he can push harder than that.
Dominic Lada will also follow him into the finish, so it will give us a direct comparison. Cross the line. It's an 8:03. Dominic Ladler seems like he hasn't improved. And now Maximilian Dehn. Where will he go? Where will Eric Häusler go? And Maximilian Dehn goes up top with an 8:02.099. Eric Häusler demotes Ladler back to 4th. Now the times are dropping.
Yeah, this is the first lap was just getting his time on the board. Now it's where people have been really pushing for those lap times.
Most people now into the pits. Nico Kuppel is still to come across the line. Lukas Mint, for a short moment, improved to 11th, now back to 12th. Volker Bielsan and BMW, best of 3 BMWs in 5th, followed by Timothy Fritsch, who still is in 6th. But look at those gaps from P5 down to P10. On the Nordschleife, that really isn't that big of a difference, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a tight field, especially like when you've got Pascal Jordan to Felix Horner. That's only 0.3 of a second, which over 26 kilometers is basically nothing.
It really isn't. And now the drivers have to get ready for the race. Kevin Estre, meanwhile, if you're interested, in 7th in front of his French colleague Adrien Lunio. Starting 8th is still a good spot on this grid, I'd reckon. I'm a bit surprised by Joachim Thunder, to be honest.
Yeah, that's not where I would normally expect to see him at the start of the race. I know this has been a bit more of a packed grid than usual, but I definitely wouldn't be expecting seeing him that far down. He's maybe didn't have the best of qualifying laps.
Don't know about you, but I'm just seeing the grid line up for the rolling start, and it looks absolutely gorgeous with all those colors. I know you can't see it on stream right now. There's drivers getting ready, cars getting on the grid, but I'm excited for this race.
Yeah, I'm excited for the flag to drop and see where it goes. But yeah, it's definitely good to see a lot more different liveries showing up now. Got a lot more people with the Beta liveries, with the EWC liveries. Obviously, anybody racing here has got a Founders Pack, so quite a few of them have got an extra livery. And it's good to see the extra colours up and down the grid.
I mean, the EWC livery is the newest edition. I actually really like it. At first I was kind of, maybe. But now that I've seen it racing, the gold really shining but not being too bright, I really like that kind of style. But now we get rolling for the start of this 2.4-hour race. The second one of its kind, the first one being nearly half a year ago in Spa-Francorchamps. Of course, won by the two mouse drivers, Moritz Löhner and Juri Kastorp. But we will certainly have a new winner today. Who's your pick? Quick and simple.
Oh, man. I'm going to go Remco. I'm going to go Mod Solidarity. I'm going to go with Remco for the win today.
We will see if that is true. But it's now green light for the 2.4 hours of the Nürburgring Nordschleife. Maximilian Dehn leading them down into turn 1, followed by Remco Major. Let's see who will have the upper hand. It's the number 4 car on the inside. That is Remco Major. Can he get the switchback done by turn 2? Not quite. It seems like everything has gone through clean on the opening first sector. And just as I said, that one of the BMWs goes round. I think that might have been Workaloo. Alizar already up to 14th.
Yeah, he's definitely got a decent jump at the beginning, which is what he needed for sure. So he'll be in the hunt for a few more places before we hit the Nordschleife proper.
Foster behind. And Alizar being spun round there by one of the other BMWs. But
Oh no.
Volker Bielstein, I think, having a good start. Nico Kuppel having a very good start. Aurelio dropping down a bit. Joachim Thunder already up into 10th.
Kevin Astra, obviously no slouch of the first lap of a Nordschleife race. He's up to 5th.
I mean, that's a good start from him. Timothy Fritsch also up into 6th. But up front, Maximilian Dehn and Remco Major are only separated by 2/10. But they are already taking off quite a bit.
Yeah, those two have got a bit of a pace gap to everyone else. I know there's been a lot of fighting behind them, so maybe when the pace settles down a little bit more, you'll get something a bit more representative. But right now they're firing off into the distance.
Of course, this first stint is highly dictated by the starting fuel. Every car here starts with 40 liters of fuel. Can make it 3 laps into the race. And then will be the big question. When will you change tires? When will you come into the pits for the second round of pit stops? So that's Timothy Fritsch.
Dominance at the beginning of at the front of the field there. First 5 places.
Oh, big drift there by Volker Bielstein. An amazing move by Nico Kuppel that are coming into 8th place past Timothy Fritsch. So lots of action going on here on the track. Dominik Ladler, meanwhile, has reclaimed 3rd position from Häusler.
Alizar here back up to 14th place now, after sneaking his way past a few people. Not an easy job now we're onto the proper Nordschleife part, loop of the track.
Yeah, it can easily catch you out. I'm a bit surprised that El Lunio has dropped off this significantly throughout this opening stage. He's down into 12th.
Yeah, he's at the back of a group of 4 drivers, and they're all kind of battling at the minute. So it's he's going to have a tough job to work his way to the front of that one. Joachim Thunder's also in that group.
Good train of 4 cars here in the mid-pack, but up front, 6/10. So Maximilian Dehn is slowly building a gap, but I think now the run up through Kesselchen, if Remco Major can keep it around 6 to 8/10 behind Maximilian Dehn into Bergwerk, I think he might be able to get close enough to him, not to launch an attack, but to keep in proximity for the Döttinger Höhe later on this lap.
Yeah, he's going to be focusing, I would think, on just maintaining, closing that gap up a little bit more before the Döttinger starts, so he can get a bit of a run. But just trying to keep it clean until then, stick to Dean's bumper.
Meanwhile, Alizar now into 12 and back on the train, including the likes of Joachim Thunder and Bräuniger. But I think Remco Major is ever so slightly too far away. And it seems like Timothy Fritsch is in trouble as well.
Yeah, he just had a spin, and it took him. There was a lot of traffic, so he quite sensibly waited before he set off again. But it did mean that he had a big delay to get it going. But thank you for that anyway, Timothy First.
Look at this through mood curve. Forecast blasting through bumper to bumper.
That BMW was looking twitchy and ready to overtake.
I feel like many of the BMW drivers are fairly aggressive in this opening stint, but might also be because the BMW lets you be aggressive way more than, for example, the Porsche Audi. We've talked about different driving styles and how you have to adapt to each car before, but especially on an early stage in a race like this on the Nordschleife, the possibly most challenging racetrack in the world, that is even more the case.
Yeah, it's the BMW can be a lot of a kind of safer, perhaps is a good word as any drive, which so you can. It means you can feel like you can be a bit more aggressive with it and push it and make kind of more sudden moves than you can with something like the Porsche. You've just got to make sure that it is a race car and it doesn't turn around and bite you for it.
Eric Häusler going toe-to-toe with Felix Horn. Felix Horn making some moves here. Forcing Eric Häusler across the curb there at the exit of Ice Curve. And side by side, that doesn't end well. That never ends well. But it somehow did end well. There was a lot of luck involved in that. But great car control by Eric Häusler.
There was definitely some luck. Someone was shining on them today for that to come across how it did. It could have been an awful lot worse.
I mean, for Felix Horn, oh, who knows, was right into Schwalbenschwanz, but what I want to say is that he wasn't in the prime position now, actually, because now they are approaching the Dörtinger Höhe, as Maximilian Dehn and Remco Major are the first to do so right now. But now, Volker Bielstein, he is closely behind Eric Häusler, in a very good position to slipstream past, and he can't really defend on that straight. If you go on board,
not a lot you can do about that. So yeah, it's got you can get a good amount of speed up before it catches.
Can weave once.
And I'm sure he'd like to be nearby, somewhere near the Bilstein Bridge.
Would fit the name, but
it would.
Porsche's mighty in the straight, isn't it?
It is very good in the straight. I don't know if some of you have come from other GT3 focused sim racing titles, you might be surprised at how quick the Porsche is in a straight in RENNSPORT. But it is. In real life, it's not slow in the straights.
Of course, this always depends on the BOP. Depending on which racing series you drive, the Audi, for example, in the Nordschleife is a rocket ship on the straights. Perhaps one of the fastest. Meanwhile, in other categories, it's kind of the slowest in the straights, but they have a very good handling-wise. So that has a lot of effect on it. But we have completed the first lap here on this 25.7 kilometer long track. Where we, if our calculations are correct, we can expect roughly 19 laps, 19 to 20 laps.
Yeah, and I think there'll be about 3 laps before they start pitting, so we've got a couple of laps of on-track action before the pit stops mess with our fun.
I mean, last time the pit stops proved to be even more fun than before, with the different tire offsets.
Yeah, I'm not making too many guesses about what people do, but I think some people could throw some spanners into the works with what they decide to do with their tires, and it'll be interesting for us watching to see what that is.
I mean, we have a couple of drivers that are stuck in the train. We can see, for example, Joachim Thunder is right behind Pascal Jordan, who is right behind Adrian Lenore, who somehow is now back into 7th. So lots of position jumps going on as well, but now under pressure from aforementioned Jordan.
Yeah, and they've got Ali Zahir catching up as well, so that's it could become a quartet before long.
I think Ali Zahir is one of the candidates who could come in a lap earlier to get past.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. I mean, he didn't have. He had an okay first lap, but there were a couple of incidents there. He seems to have got his head down and he's got his pace now, but he's about to catch up with Joachim Thunder, so that's going to mess with his rhythm a little bit. But yeah, he may well think I was catching that group up. I'm going to come in, fill up on fuel, leave the tyres, and try and get a bit of track position.
Oh, Volker Bildstein. Oh my god. How did he save that? Across the curbing. Well, as long as you can catch it, you can do it, but you shouldn't necessarily. Still messes with your tire life a bit, and seeing as these tires have to last a bit longer than usual, this is also something to consider.
He's maybe used some of those family connections to get some special shocks for this race.
Who knows? Alisana on the back bumper of Joachim Thunder. They already went past Bräuniger.
Yeah, he was pushing to do some overtaking maneuvers not too long ago, but so he's definitely not wanting to stay there. He's not decided that 10th is good enough.
He's definitely making big moves here on the opening phase of this race. But we've seen some cars in the wall, and luckily for them, damage is turned off for this event. Will come at a certain stage. Of course, we already have it in RCE and RCL. But a lot of driver errors. We haven't seen really, except for maybe the Dunlop Kehre at the start, collisions between the drivers.
No, it's been pretty clean. There's been some good, sensible driving by everyone involved, and I think you've got to try and temper your aggression at the beginning with the length of the race. Ali Zahir being one of the exceptions there, because he had so many places to make up. But it is a long race, so you definitely don't want to be going off all guns blazing and ruin your tyres. And even though with no damage, you still don't want to be smacking into the barrier. It's not good for your race times.
But you kind of also have the thing that in a race like this, which is a bit longer than usual, you know that once a certain driver, especially if you know them, many of the drivers you have here, know each other from Discord at this stage. You kind of know if he's gone, he's gone. And you kind of keep to be on the train, you're trying to keep the pace up to be with the guys in front, and then you over push and basically lose it. Or if you are ahead of a driver and you know he can easily counter-attack you on the jettinger, you easily over-push the car and end the barriers. I mean, we've seen it in Schwalbenschwanz, which is a very easy corner to go too wide, let's say, if you're over-pushing. Because you have to brake at a certain point, as you do for most corners, but you have to brake at a certain point, get back on the throttle and turn in. And if you do that too late, because of the way the corner is structured, it will drag you out even further. There's no way of coming back from there except for completely slamming the brake or hitting the wall or both in some instances. And I mean, with Felix Horn, who has recovered from that incident, but that was basically what happened to him. He tried to push as hard as he could to be in front of the Porsche that has overtaken him just before. I think that was Eric Häusler, who's dropped down a bit. Snow White behind Alizaya. Didn't see what happened there. But, yeah, that basically cost him the position, and also the position to Volker Bielsen, who's now running in fourth.
Yeah, I did see Eric Häusler before going fairly slow, and Ali Zahir and Joachim Thunder overtook him, although he seems to have the pure pace. He's caught right back up to Ali Zahir now. And, he's looking pretty racy. He also doesn't look like he wants to stay there for too long.
I would have been surprised if he wants to go side by side through this section again, though. Side by side through Pflanzgarten is not something I would do again. And yes, I said again because I also did it once and wasn't a good idea. Wasn't really my choice in that instance, but
it's not always your choice on this track, is it?
Indeed, very much. But while we follow this trio, we are getting ready for another round on the Döttinghöhe, and we see a close fight for P5 as well. Adrian Lunio following Felix Horn.
He's in a good position there to grab a draft and pull closer to Felix and still get enough speed up to kind of try and make a move.
It could be a bit far away.
He closed in right at the end there.
But he's still... he's not quite going for it. Let's take a look at this fight. Joachim Thunder kind of giving the draft to Alizar so he can stay in front. And these three also stay as they are.
Ooh.
Not quite sure if Alizar was hit in the back there from Häusler. It kind of sounded like it, but...
I think he either braked a bit late or he wasn't expecting to have much Joachim Thunder slowed down. He seemed to just tap him in the front.
But now side by side Joachim Thunder against Häusler. Häusler down the inside through the Yokohama S. And takes 8th place. And I've seen just, you have to look through the replay. And indeed it was Alizar ever so slightly misbraking there. Can tell he's feeling the pressure. Usually, it's not a usual mistake from Alizar.
No, definitely not. Oh, and he just made another one as well. Coming into T1, he just outbraked himself. Well, they're saying that Broilinger waited, so I assume he thinks it was his fault.
Meanwhile, it seems like Enrico Bräuniger and Lukas Mint are up for battle. Lukas Mint improved to 13th. I think Bräuniger was the car we saw spun round in the Yokohama S on the exit. So perhaps a bit too much throttle?
Maybe, yeah. It's although it's a safer car to drive, you can still unbalance the M4. It's like I said before, it's still a race car. It's a bit twitchy at times compared to your average car. And of course, these guys are pushing it to the limit.
Oh, and above, that's exactly the issue. I think what is a bit of a thing with the BMW, which some people can cope with amazingly, which is why some people are so fast in it, but that of course goes for every single car. It kind of makes you feel safe in the drift. If you drive the Audi or Porsche, for instance, which are more nervous, if you want to describe it like that, you kind of back out of the drift earlier. But with the BMW, it just makes you feel like, okay, it's gripping. You can't push it as far and then you push it too far. And that's something, for example, I can't really cope with.
It can maybe give you a bit of a false sense of confidence at times.
I think it's also a bit about how you interpret that sense of security. Because that's what I've seen many people struggle with in the rear and mid-engine cars. That they correct too early because they feel like the car is sliding away from them even though it's not. And therefore they correct too early and can't push the car as hard as some other people can do. And meanwhile, on the other hand, some people just can't push a car that gives you the confidence as much because they don't really feel where the edge is compared to someone who's amazing in the BMW, and we've seen people being amazing in the I mean, Volker Wildstein is having a great time here on track. That's for certain.
Yeah, they all have their own characteristics, and you need to find the one that fits you as a driver as well. And it's sometimes you don't want to. You fall in love with a car and you want to stick with it.
Very much the case with Joachim Thunder.
Yeah.
I mean, he has driven, before he chose the Audi, what has he driven all the time? There was something else, I think.
Did he used to drive the Porsche?
I think he did for a time, and he owned the Audi because, of course, if you register as RENNSPORT for free in the Epic Games Store, soon also on Steam, but for now on the Epic Games Store you can register for free and choose one of the 4 GT3s as your main car. You can drive all of them, but this is the car you will collect liveries for when they drop, just as the EWC livery last time around, for instance. And Joachim Thunder chose the Audi, and therefore kind of had to drive it because he wanted to show off his liveries, of course. This one being the first livery to ever drop in RENNSPORT, the R1 Katowice, from February or March 2023, I think.
It was something like that, yeah.
So yeah, fairly long time ago. But at some point he was just like, okay, I'm gonna get used to the R8, and since then has had some very good races, sometimes struggled a bit, but overall great improvement curve there for him, and I think at this stage he's also fairly happy with it. Maybe he can let us know after this race how happy he is with this choice.
I know he had a bit of an issue when the new tyre model came out, just because he had a specific set of settings he used to use, and they weren't working so well with the new tyres. But I think he's messed around with it, and he seems pretty happy with it again now.
I mean, of course, getting comfortable.
Fellow Audi driver, for exactly the same reason that I own it.
I mean, I own it because I really like it. But yeah, I also used to love the Porsche a lot. I've said that in other streams, I think, as well. But for me, I never could really get used to the M4. It's a great car to drive in itself, but I just couldn't extract the pace out of it in a way that other people could do. And I'm absolutely amazed by the skill some people have with those different cars, because you look at the lap times, you look at the pole time from Maximilian Dehn in the first race of the RENNSPORT Founders League, and you look at this one now with the Porsche. They are completely different laps in a way. They are very different how they are driven, where he gets the time from, and it's something that I be completely fascinated from. Meanwhile, it's getting a bit dark out there, isn't it?
It's getting there. You can see in the trees, it's definitely getting darker. It's you can see the golden hue as the sun's beginning to set. It's just 8:15 roughly in game time, so it's definitely starting to get towards the dark side. Seen a lot of drivers already with the lights on, not wanting to get caught out with getting black flagged for driving without lights.
Of course, we have a 24-hour day-night cycle. Oh, and Eric Häusler losing it through the small carousel. Too aggressive on the exit. And Maximilian Dehn coming into the pits. Of course, this is the end of the third lap. What will these two do?
Fortunately, my replay is about 30 seconds behind yours, but I'll tell you what he's choosing to do as soon as I can.
Well, of course, that's because this time I'm not a replay server. This is all live footage from the server. If you want to check live data from this server, you can always check on the RENNSPORT app. If you install the RENNSPORT app, go to contests and look for the 2.4, or I think it's called Founders League Round 4, as it is. As Felix Horn can keep 6th position from Pascal Jordan, but they now have to come into the pits as well.
Both Remco and Maximilian Dehn just took fuel. Remco was an absolute perfect pit stop, no time added whatsoever.
I'm a bit confused. If we take a look at second position, you can see a BMW that hasn't pitted and is likely not gonna make it on fuel as far as I can see it.
Yeah, I think Mr. Bilstein there might not have been paying attention to his fuel meter.
Lots of traffic in the pits right now, of course.
But what I can tell you is that Remco Mayor didn't take tires and has put a lot of fuel in.
Has Dominic Ladler changed, refueled more than the two leading Porsches by chance? Because he lost quite a bit of time in the pits as far as I could see that.
He's not refueled as much as Remco Mayor did. But like I did say, Remco did an amazing pit stop. He was bang on the mark, so he didn't get any added time. I wonder if Dominic Ladler was maybe playing it a bit safe on the pit entry, putting his pit limiter on.
Meanwhile, I have sad news. Adrian Lunio has retired from this race. Yet has had some performance issues as far as I know. But that's very unfortunate.
Ali's here missing his pit box and has just got disqualified for reversing down the pit lane.
That is very unfortunate. I mean, Davis has gone from bad to worse for Alizai, hasn't it?
Yeah, he's not had a good day. He has put in Discord that he couldn't see his pit box. So he was obviously just going up and down the lane trying to find which one was his. And unfortunately, the game detects him going backwards.
Felix Horn has lost a bit of race position, track position. It's now behind Nico Koppel. I think he may have changed tires. Joachim van Arp into 6th. Perhaps haven't had changed tires. Same goes for Pascal Jordan. So that is now gonna mix up the strategies quite a bit.
Yeah, and we're getting properly dark now. It's starting to, the light's really starting to fade, so getting to the interesting time of going from a day lap to a night lap and seeing who can maintain their pace.
Of course, there's always a bit of difference between driving in the daytime and driving in the dark.
Volker Bilstein's about to have
a small problem as far as I can see it.
Yeah, he's got a long way to go on not a lot of fuel, and I don't think Remco is going to push him.
I think that might be the end for the best BMW on the track at the moment. The engine is off. Of course, this comes also down to experience, which the guys in the front have more than enough of. But of course, if Volker Bilstein hasn't had too many experience in the longer races so far, comes back to bite you, unfortunately. And means the end.
Can do for sure.
Yeah, that is the end for the 18 car in this race. But we still have more than 1.5 hours to go.
think due to ending up behind Bilstein and taking on more fuel than Maximilian Dean, Remco, the gap back to Remco Mayor is slowly growing. We'll have to see whose strategy plays out best in the end.
Trying to think back to the first race, Maximilian Dean had quite a big gap. Didn't he take tires? I'm not quite sure if he did. That one,
It
of
did
course.
close up a bit towards the end, but I think he had such a massive gap it didn't matter so much. But yeah, got a feeling he might have done. And this being a different car in the Porsche, I believe, eats tires a bit. That was interesting sideways movement there.
And Felix Horn up into 6th with that. The Audis so far having a strong comeback. Joachim Thunder and Felix Horn starting 9th and 10th-ish something. Now in 5th and 6th. Of course I can check that on the app.
Yeah, Adrian Lunio is saying as well that he also couldn't see his pit box when he came to do the pit stop. Because I noticed he was down as a DSQ on the leaderboard.
Oh, and Nico Kuppel round at the exit of the big carousel this time around. So the carousel spelling lots of issues for the Porsche drivers.
There's a bit of a shift of weight there, and the Porsche doesn't necessarily like the back end becoming, well, the car becoming a bit more unbalanced. Especially if you're on the throttle, it can do interesting things. It's almost like putting the engine at the back of the car is a bad idea.
Seems to work pretty well for Porsche though, so I'm not gonna complain about this one. But now it's properly dark out there. It will get even darker because we're just now at 21:46 in-game time.
Yeah, there's still a little bit of light in the sky, but not a lot. Yeah, they've got to settle in and try and find their nighttime rhythm now, because it's just a little bit different. All of your breaking points and your reference points are either different or not visible anymore. So yeah, these drivers are just be settling down and trying to get smooth for the nighttime stint.
Meanwhile, I can tell you that Joachim Thunder has started this race in 14th. So, yeah, top 10 not quite. P10 was aforementioned Felix Horn. But I think Joachim Thunder can be pretty happy with this progress up until this point into the race. But he also hasn't changed tires, to my knowledge.
I don't think... I couldn't catch everyone as they went in the pits, but I don't think many people changed tyres there. So there will be kind of a stint and a halving on the same tyres, presumably, before they come in. And I don't think anyone's going to want to do the entire race on one set of tyres.
I think the entirety is not really possible. Maybe Remco can prove us wrong, but I don't think we will see a no tire stop in this race. You of course see them again in the pits in roughly 50 minutes for another stop to refuel. Can make about 8 laps on fuel.
Yeah.
But actually the pace of Maximilian Dehn and Remco Mayer might decide if this is gonna be a 3-stopper or 4-stopper actually.
Yeah, I think
2-stopper or 3-stopper calculations. As Joachim Thunder is coming out of the pits now. What has he maybe gonna drive through penalty?
he has got a drive-through penalty, yes.
back to the drawing board, it is for him.
I don't know if that was for speeding in the pit lane or track cuts.
Can't imagine track cuts at this stage from him, to be honest.
I'd hope not. Oh, no, it's definitely not a drive-through. So it must have been speeding in the pit lane. But yeah, the difference of fuel between Mayor and Dean is quite large. I don't want to say too much in case anyone's listening. But yeah, there's definitely a different strategy going on there.
Where Dominic Ladler's sitting silently in third. He has pretty much nothingness in front of him and nothingness in behind of him.
In fact, the fuel loads up and down the field vary quite a lot, to be honest. It's surprising. Some people trying a few shenanigans, I think, to try and see if they can make some places, or just hammering it with the short fuel loads. So it could get interesting sooner than you think, as far as the pit lane is concerned.
Meanwhile, we got a message from our lone Mercedes. Aliza, unfortunately, is a DNF in this race. It was fun to watch live, but not fun to race in this case. Which, yeah, he was very unlucky, wasn't he, with all that happened, especially in the opening stages.
He was, yeah. He was making a really good comeback, and I was looking forward to see where he would end up with that. But commiserations to Ali. I'm sure we'll see him back in another race soon enough, because he's one of our fairly consistent drivers around here, not just on track, but also in entering races.
You know, I'm just again stunned by this livery. I know we keep talking about it every night race and every single time it's on screen, but I really adore it. I really like it.
It does look really good. It was on my RENNSPORT commentary bingo card for today. One of us mentioning the Founders liveries at night. I felt fairly confident that one was going to come up. And of course, at the end of some of the straights, like Dottinger as well, you get to see it in full effect, where it shrinks as you're slowing down, going through Tiergarten.
I mean, of course, there's also this variation, which you will get by buying the Platinum pack.
Yes.
It's just also a bit animation, not as much as the Diamond one, but I really like the color palette of it, but I'm maybe a bit biased because it's fairly close to what I run on my personal liveries. But in all fairness, I'm fairly easy to impress.
I know we've occasionally talked about custom liveries, and they will be coming to game eventually. And you are, I suppose it's fair to say you're pretty into the graphics design side of things. So I'm assuming you're going to be hitting the livery designs pretty hard when they start coming out.
That could well be the case. But yeah. I think we got some very good looking liveries at this stage in the game to collect. And also a good variety on track now. I mean, we have a lot of different liveries covering the top 7. Maximilian Dehn wearing the EWC, Remco Meyer being on the basic, Dominic Ladler having the Platinum, Dominic Ladler is using the Diamond livery. Then we have the basic livery for the BMW and Audi, and then Felix Häusler, Nico Kuppel in this from Sweden. It was from DreamHack, I won.
Yep, the DreamHack Porsche, one of our favourites. It's always good to see that on track.
It's also much more distinguishable than it was before. I mean, if you think back maybe 2 months, we had a lot of the beta liveries, which now have kind of become a bit rarer, which is surprising that it went this fast. Even though I really like the beta reward liveries, so the black ones with the orange RENNSPORT R on the top, and the golden one for if you have won a race during the closed beta stage. I think in terms of looks, they are my favorites, actually.
Definitely getting a lot more liveries in the GT3s. We've got a fair amount of variety. Could do with a bit more in some of the other classes, but the GT3s are fairly well represented now. Seems to be a lot more base-coloured BMWs than anything else. I don't know whether it's people picking a car and then deciding that they can't drive it and just defaulting to the BMW or what. But
I mean, the base livery on the BMW does look good.
It does.
I gotta say, in all fairness, I'm not the biggest BMW fan that could be there, even though they made some very, very great cars. But the basic livery of BMWs usually looks super good. I mean, they also have their art car program, which has chucked out so many iconic and great race cars in terms of the looks. And I think the base livery of the M4 is nothing that should be ignored in that. Can think about the car what you will. I will not put my opinion there on anyone who's on a different opinion. Because in the end, that's all comes down to taste and if you like the type of car. But the livery in itself, it's just something that is kind of satisfying. I don't know, it's hard to describe it.
In a lot of GT3 focused games, I've tended to really like the Lamborghini Huracan, which is why I kind of drifted towards the Audi when I picked a car on RENNSPORT. But I will probably regret my decision if the Lamborghini ever finally arrives here. But I do like some Lamborghini liveries. I'm sorry, it's my car of choice.
They also do look very nice. I really like them. Meanwhile, what Timothy Fritsch is going to like very much as well is that he got past Nico Kuppel without much of a fight, but just drafting down on the Döttinger Höhe. Now up into 7th place. Not much Nico Kuppel could have done there. Tried to tuck back into the slipstream of the BMW, but wasn't quite enough for him. And I think he will be too far away to do a move into turn 1.
There isn't a lot you can do when somebody's coming up behind you on Döttinger, especially... we are using some racing rules today. We have some first race stewarding available afterwards to these drivers. And I believe the racing rules do involve excessive weaving and blocking of other drivers. So you can't just go from one side of the track constantly blocking the other driver from getting past.
Indeed. We will talk a lot more about it tomorrow, because tomorrow you will have another event. The RCE GT4s at Jeddah. We had some interesting races at Jeddah already last week in the RCL. But GT4s will be even more interesting than that, I think, as Eric Häusler is now going back at it with Felix Horn for 5th place. Remember, these two went side by side through Pflanzgarten. Now going side by side through Bildheim, and Eric Häusler, he had a bit of space there, given by the Audi, but had to run right and is not too happy about it.
I don't think that's the end of the Timothy Frisch-Nico Kuppel battle either, by the look of it. They're sticking pretty much bumper to bumper. So we've got a good few fights brewing across the lap now, up and down the field.
I mean, it's also the interesting thing with different cars on track. Each car being good in a different part of such a long track means you always gain a bit of time, then lose a bit of time.
Yeah, and it's up to the drivers in this situation whether they want to try and contest any of these moves or and potentially waste even more time taking defensive lines and battling each other, or just sit behind the driver in front and count down the laps until it gets a bit more towards the punch period of the race.
Bit of a squabble there for Nico Kuppel through Flugplatz. I mean, with tires degrading, getting used, and a few loads changing, you approach a corner like Flugplatz and here Schwedenkreuz as well. Pretty much flat out. Small lift maybe here into Schwedenkreuz. You have to have so much trust in your car, which is changing every time you come around. It's crazy to explain to a person who isn't into motorsports or sim racing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a difficult, I know, understanding it, as in, it's difficult to understand until you've done it, even though I've only done it in a virtual sense. But yeah, it's how much the handling of the car can change as your tyres wear, especially with us being on fixed setups right now, so it's not always like an optimal wear pattern. You'd sometimes have slightly uneven wear to different tyres, and that can really change how much grip you're getting on the 4 different corners of the car.
Eric Häusler's gun pass into 5th position. And yeah, indeed, Jeddah race tomorrow, 8 PM, GT4s at night. First Jeddah night race to be broadcasted. I think in EWC they also didn't run Jeddah at night, did they? I think they only had daytime races, if I remember that correctly.
Right, yeah.
So, world premiere. Tomorrow, 8 PM. Mark your calendars.
It's not overly different at Jeddah, because it is an F1 track, and I don't know if you've noticed, but those cars don't have headlights. So,
well, cars don't need headlights. Because
so
the track is always lit.
There's a lot of floodlights going on at Jeddah, but it's still different. It still adds a bit, and there's some really impressive scenery to look at. I think our art team's done a good job with that one.
Indeed, but I think when you throw a GT4 car around that track at those speeds, 240 kph and above, you don't really look at the scenery.
No, but it'll be good for us to look at.
Indeed, you have a lot of stuff to look at. But perhaps also good racing, as Pascal Jordan is dropping down the order. Now into Klostertal. He had a moment, is now right in front of his BMW colleague Timothy Fridge, promoting Häusler and Horn into 4th and 5th respectively. Look how Nico Kuppel is pushing Timothy Fridge through the carousel.
We've got a good kind of group of 3 cars forming there. Well, I expect some fun times ahead when it comes to dotting a hill.
Actually, we see another car in front of them. Oh, and Nico Kuppel big off there. Clipped the grass, gun round. Not what he needed in that situation, because this is the part where you really need to keep close to the cars in front. And the car we see being overtaken there, I think that might be Pierre Colbeck, if I see that correct, because I can't find the 20 car anywhere else on the map, and it's the 20 car.
Good couple having to wait for a bit of traffic and finally getting turned around. I thought he was stuck on one of the curbs for a minute there, but he seems to have got the car moving.
You will also reach the darkest point of the night soon. You are right now close to 1 a.m. Darkest time is around about 2 a.m. I think it's also the most challenging part of the race because you're now nearly an hour into the race. It's dark, yeah, depending on if you have a car around you or not, you have nothing to focus on really. Of course, in many parts of the world, it's also a bit later in the day in real life, but now it's Timothy Fridge trying to get a move on Pascal Jordan. These two definitely won't have a boring one now. But Pascal Jordan, we haven't really talked about him during this race, but he had a good race. I mean, of course, he now had the mistake in close Tastatur, but he's still running 7th in one of his earlier races.
Yeah, for sure. It's a good result in the field that he's in. Definitely. What's the word I'm looking for? Words fail me sometimes.
You are British.
We only invented the language. It doesn't mean I know it.
Fair point.
But yeah, it's definitely looking good for his chances in further races from here. He seems to be doing pretty well. He's handling the car well. He's dealing with the traffic around him and the quality of the competition. Nico Couple right now diving into the pit lane. He was the car lowest on fuel, although he's got plenty left at the minute. He's maybe just decided that after a couple of spins, his tyres can't take it anymore.
Of course, it's a snowball effect. Once you spin, it's easier to overheat the tires again, get them into spinning again.
He is changing tyres, so that looks like it might be the case. The next person I would expect to see in the pits would be Felix Horn. He's got a couple of laps left, but he's going to be probably one of the earlier pitters.
Maybe this is also a good strategy to go for from his side, because with a lighter fuel load, he can go faster. Maybe he's anticipating a 3-stopper, while others poke on it being a 2-stopper. So curious to see how Den and Major will play out. I mean, as you have mentioned, the fuel loads are quite different on these cars. You won't spoil who's on what. But gap between the two of them is 17.5 seconds. But it's not like Maximilian Den is massively faster. You have to see that those 17.6 seconds have concluded across those last 54 minutes. So roughly estimated, that's 1 second per 3 minutes. So maybe 2.5 per lap, and that's not much on the Nordschleife.
No, for sure. If a pit strategy can end up with Major getting somewhere near the slipstream, he may well have a good chance of keeping up.
Lucas Mint, who was in a bit of a limbo earlier in the race, seems to really have settled for his pace now. He's in 11th position right now. And actually not too far away from the rest. Of course, right now the gap might seem fairly big, but he has Nico Koppel 12 seconds ahead of him. That is doable. Seeing as Nico Koppel is, unfortunately for him, struggling quite a bit.
Yeah, he's got a fairly decent fuel load back on board now and a new set of tyres. So I'm sure while his car was stopped, he had a few choice words with himself and is settling down to try and put in some decent lap times now. With a race of this length, you can never entirely rule yourself out. I know he's probably not going to win from this position, but you can always make a few positions up. You never know what's going to happen.
Maybe we can take another look at the standings if we are already in the kind of driving stage of this night. Because Dominic Ladler currently in third in this race is also third in the standings. Joachim Thunder is a bit further down. So, what do you reckon? Dominic Ladler, Timothy Fridge, could this one be a close one in the end?
I think it could be, yeah. There's 3 places between them at the minute, and I can't remember what the points difference is between 3rd and 6th. He's got a lot. He's got a lot of points to make up on Timothy Fritsch, obviously, but it's not impossible. He's having a bit of a lonely race at the minute, is Dominic Ladler. He's over a minute behind Remco Mayor, and is 40-some seconds ahead of Eric Hausler, so he's a bit in no man's land right now, driving around quietly lapping by himself.
2 drivers who will definitely improve a lot with their performances, and if they can keep up this race as it is right now. One is Häusler, who's currently down in 10th in the standings, but he's only driven the TCR race 2 weeks ago. And same goes for Bräuniger, because he's currently 9th in this race. They can make up a lot of points here, because Tim Schroeder isn't here, Bessier isn't here, Lunio and Zaher are DNFs. And Thunder's also a bit further down.
Yeah, there's a lot of points to be had for those guys in the kind of like mid-pack of the points table. So they've got as much reason as anybody to try and keep the concentration up and just keep pounding out the laps. It's just gone 2 AM in game, so this is about as dark as it's going to get. Which is pretty dark, I think you'll agree. It's a fairly clear night and the moon's out, so it's a bit lighter than it sometimes is.
I mean, Joachim Thunder's giving us some beautiful shots here through the Eifel forest.
Yeah, I'm sure he's not getting time to admire them quite as much as we are, but it's looking very pretty.
I mean, I don't know about you, how many longer races you have driven, but do you sometimes have those moments when you're kind of by yourself, like Joachim Thunder is at this stage, or Dominic Ladler as well, that you kind of just in your vibe, you drive, but you kind of forget where in the race you are?
Yes, I know what you mean. I've done a fair amount of endurance racing in other games, including a 24-hour, and yeah, I've tended to be in the night shift in some races as well. So as I've mentioned a few times, I'm not the fastest driver known to man, so I've always got a bit of action with getting lapped by quicker drivers and having to keep an eye on your mirrors more than my own, rather than my own laps, so to speak. So you do get a bit robotic about your own keeping at your own pace and things. So I tend to concentrate a bit more on who's coming up behind me and trying to save as much time as possible with being neat in the traffic. Not so much of an issue for these guys here. There's been a bit of lapping going on. It's not like there are 100 cars on the Nordschleife right now.
I mean, depending on who you are, it may feel like it. I mean, some drivers definitely didn't have a second without another car inside.
Yeah. But yeah, it's endurance racing is a very different beast to a sprint race. I think mentally, as much as anything, you've got to approach it in a different way. And although this is only 2.4 hours, which some people might find only 2.4 hours is a bit of a shocking statement, it's fairly short for an endurance race because we don't have driver swaps yet. So yeah, it's a lot for you to concentrate on yourself for the entire distance of a race.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically what you do in real life as one driver as a stint, even a bit more than that in many cases. In the Nordschleife, you usually see double stints, that means 2 times 8 laps. These guys are doing 2 times 8 laps plus either 2 or 3, maybe even 4 if Maximilian Dehn and Remco Major are deciding to push it.
You get the guys in the hypercars in WEC doing triple stints, but I think their stints are a little bit shorter, don't they? Yeah, double stinting a TT3 car is a fairly standard practice. That was kind of how we used to do it in endurance races. It's pretty much as a standard. You'd get in the car, do a full stint, refuel, do another stint, get out of the car and change tyres. So it was just don't break the tyres, especially at the beginning.
Well, to my knowledge, Maximilian Dehn also comes from a more endurance-ish background in terms of sim racing. So I'm not really surprised by him being this consistent, but so does Remco Major, and you can tell. I mean, these two are separated in terms of pace and skill, not by all too much, I'd say.
No, the laps have kind of wavered up and down a little bit. There was a bit of traffic earlier on. They seem to have slowed their pace down a little bit during the night compared to what they were doing during the day. But and obviously they're been on bigger fuel loads, and with the tyres are probably starting to feel a bit worse for wear by now. But yeah, the pace is pretty close, really, considering they've been driving for just over an hour now.
Because an hour being considered a sprint by those kind of drivers. I mean, of course, in reality it is a sprint, but sim racing is always a bit different in that way.
Yeah, especially anybody who's been taking part in the public races in RENNSPORT. They are of the shorter, more drop in, drop out kind of time range, unless you're doing any of the feature races. We do have the feature races, which are a bit longer. I think they're 45 minutes, are they, Lena?
I mean, there's one 30-minute race, which is depending on if the feature, what kind of format it is, but we have 2 multi-class races in there. One 30-minute, one 45-minute race. And you will find yourself that they feel a bit longer. They're definitely way more than the typical series or sprint races.
Yeah, the shorter races, you really don't have to worry too much about your tyres or anything else. You just sit down and try and do quali laps and go bumper to bumper with a few people. Whereas once you get into the races start growing a bit in length, then the state of your tyres does become a bit more of an issue. But for these guys now, they're definitely going to be thinking about tyres.
That will be definitely the big factor. We are more than 1 hour into this race. Completed 8 laps. Where Maximilian Den comes across the line to make it 9.
Felix Horn and Timothy Frisch are closing, keeping a little bit of about a second gap between them. But I'm fairly sure Felix Horn is going to have to come in for fuel this lap. So it'll be, I wonder how that strategy is going to pan out for him over the course of the race.
Well, he won't make it into the finish with 1 tank of fuel, so he'll definitely have to come in again after this one.
Yeah, and if he changes tyres now, then he's got to do almost the race on he's splitting the race in half as far as tyres is concerned almost. So if he does have to stop for a quick splash of fuel at the end, then it's he hasn't got time to be changing tyres.
He would make the most out of his tyres, so it's always a bit of a point to consider. Because at a certain stage, of course, your tyres drop off in performance. If you split the race in half, you typically have a good go. But it always depends on where this kind of drop-off edge is. If it's very early, you might want to call it half. If it's very late, you want to stay out for longer, keep track position. Oh, and maybe a bit of commentator's curse there. But once he goes exiting the coaster. The coaster is really one of the hotspots for driver mistakes here today.
Yeah, it's catching people out a lot today, isn't it? I think Timothy Frisch was catching him up. He'd closed the gap up quite a lot through the section running up to the carousel. So I think he was maybe just pushing a little bit too hard, trying to make sure he kept a gap. Either that or he was doing the sim racer's favourite of trying to calculate your fuel while you're driving and messing with your pit menu. But it seems like an odd time to do that with Dottinger just around the corner.
Almost like it was designed for sim racing. To put a very long straight just ahead of the pits. But it really is of great advantage doing all your calculations there.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I don't deal very well with splitting the concentration like that. It's, I find it very hard to do simple maths while I'm sim racing.
Well, I typically do it in the corners and set it up in the straights. I don't really have the biggest issue with doing mathematics while driving in a way, but that doesn't mean the mathematics are always right.
Yep, Felix Horn is definitely changing tyres as this car pops up onto the air jacks.
Didn't have the best stopping time though.
No, he got nearly 3 seconds added to his time there, so he wasn't particularly centered on the box.
Look at how dark it is here through the section triple right Wehrseifen. Of course, the Nordschleife, it's not only dark because it's dark, but you're in the middle of a forest with lots of hills.
It definitely looks darker just after you've come out of the bits that are lit by the fans and the floodlights as well. It takes a while for the view to kind of clear up a bit after that. And then you get the sections with the big night sky ahead of you. It looks a lot lighter because of the nice clear night we've got tonight, which is always good.
Maximilian Den so far definitely working out perfectly. Same goes for Remco Major.
Yeah, the gap to them between those two was opened up a little bit more. Maximilian Dean's last lap was an 8:05, which was definitely not on par with what he was doing at the beginning of the race, but it's nothing to be sneezed at as far as the lap time's concerned.
I mean, of course, the tires are nearly an hour older.
Yes, yeah, and I think the Porsche has a bit of a reputation for chewing through tires. So, of course, that's kind of the same for all the top 4 drivers at the minute. They're all driving Porsches, so they're going to be screaming for some new tires when it comes to the pit stops, I think.
I mean, every, let's say, car brand, all the drivers of one car brand are doing kind of similar strategies in a way. All the Porsches we see up top, Dean, Major, Ladler, Häusler, they've gone for quite a normal way. Fridge and Jordan are just consistently putting laps in, playing it quite safe. And then we have the two Audis of Thunder and Horn who are trying different strategies, being a bit experimental with what they are doing. It's very interesting to keep an eye on that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. The gap between Felix Horn and Joachim Thunder is 45, nearly 46 seconds after Felix Horn's early pit stop. Joachim Thunder might be going for another lap before he comes in. I'm not sure.
I think he would be a bit too tight. Yeah, just now in Metzgesfeld.
So it'll be interesting to see where he comes out in relation to Felix Horn, especially with Felix having that incident just before they pitted.
I mean, it didn't really matter that much, right, when he changed tires.
No, true.
It won't really affect him now.
I'm not really sure how long a pit stop is from coming off the track to coming back on the track. But Horn will have the advantage of having his tyres up to temperature and got used to the added weight and extra grip of his car and how it feels, compared to Thunder, who's just going to be coming out the pits cold, so to speak, potentially in a fight.
Watching further down the grid, we have Lukas Minde and Volker Liu, who are both still driving consistent lap times in their own rights. And 10th and 11th in the grid like this is very respectable and will give them some good points.
Yeah, for sure.
As Maximilian Dehn comes in, Remco Major stays out and will take the lead of the 2.4-hour Nordschleife race. Let's see for how long, but
Dean didn't get a very good pit stop. He got a decent amount of added time there. He's obviously refueling and changing tyres at this stage of the race, so he's going to have a fairly long pit stop before he sets off again.
But it tells a lot about these two races that Maximilian Dehn has come into the pits and will re-enter the track a long way in front of the following cars.
Yeah. Yeah, he built up between him and Remco, they built up a fairly monstrous gap back to poor Dominic Ladler there.
And I mean, we know that Dominic Ladler is a high-quality driver. But, I mean, especially Dehn seems to be just a Nordschleife specialist. and on a very different level on this specific track. We haven't really seen him drive other combinations though, so...
No, he's very good on the time trial boards. He's quite active on there and often takes part in our time trial of the week. So he's not just fast at the Nordschleife, he is fast other places, but he obviously likes racing here. Maybe a bit more than other tracks.
Which is understandable. I mean, the racing on the Nordschleife is very different to the racing on other tracks. You have to be a lot more strategic, in a way also respectful, because you just can't lob it down the inside because you will take both cars out. On other tracks, okay, you have one-off and all that kind of stuff. You don't have that here.
No, it's a very unique place to race, isn't it? And you can see why people kind of fall in love with it and just enjoy racing here so much. The idea of a race series just being at one track every week might seem very odd to people, but people do it in real life all the time.
Issues there for Lucas Mint, unfortunately, having spun behind Nico Kuppel, who has escaped back to the pits, I think. That's still position for the Brazilian driver. But it's getting a bit brighter again. I can see some first red light at the sky.
Yeah, it's just about 5:15 in the morning in game time, so the sun's just starting to make itself known. And you can see there Joachim Thunder coming into the pits. He is changing tyres. Shock, horror. But he had a fairly decent stop, got pretty near the centre of the box, so not too much added time for him.
I mean, for him as well, he won't make it with 2 stops. I'm curious. Maximilian Dehn, of course, also won't make it on 2 stops. Remco Major. We are now in lap 10. Seems like he still has a while to go on this fuel.
Yeah, he's definitely trying something a bit new, isn't he? I know, like you said before, he did say he didn't think he'd beat Maximilian Dehn, so he's obviously decided to throw a bit of an interesting pit strategy into the works and see what he can get out of it.
I mean, it's the only way you can beat a driver if you know he's faster than you. Pretty much confirmed by the qualifying result.
And right now, Felix Horn did overtake Joachim Thunder in the pits, as we may have expected. So he's circulating about 30 seconds ahead of Joachim Thunder right now.
I wonder, I think Remco Major may change tires. I don't think he will do it in one set. That would be a bit mental.
Yeah.
So let's reduce 27 seconds from the gap between him and Dehn. That still leaves us at 20-ish seconds, 22 seconds.
Yeah. I mean, at the minute, he's running a lot less fuel than Dehn, so if he's going to
But he's on older rubber.
He is on older rubber, but I'm sure he's going to be trying to kind of eat into that gap.
Mathematically speaking, before Dehn went into the pits, the gap was about 23 seconds after 1 hour 15.
Yeah.
Roundabout. Well, we still have 1 hour and 4 No, wait. Yeah, 1 hour and 4. Sounds about right. To go. Which means that Maximilian Dehn will have a certain pace advantage here. Will it be a final lap shootout?
It might get close, because I wonder if Dean's going to go for... I mean, presumably he's not going to try and do the rest of it in one stint, but he'll also taking a lot of fuel on board.
Maybe it will be just possible. Closely. Our perception to this point was 8 laps on one tank of fuel. But Remco Major came in lap 3.
Yeah, so he's done 7. About to finish 8. And he's still got quite a lot of fuel on board.
Maybe he can do 9. Has he fuel saved a bit though? That will be the interesting part.
Yeah, true. I mean, his pace definitely wasn't slow. So if he has, it's only been a small amount.
Could be ever so slightly enough. So it will be interesting until we cross the finish line. That's we're certain of. And it's getting bright again. The sun is coming out. Of course, in real life they judge this as one of the hardest parts in the race, with the sun being very low and drivers being easily blinded by it. But in sim racing we don't really have that effect to this extent. I think it's one of the best hours because it kind of gives you a motivational boost, which it also does in real life. But you made it through the night, very challenging part, and you're now on the day of finishing this race.
Yeah, you're starting to see a bit more reference around you, especially now for Dominic Ladley, who can see perfectly well. So you can see the reference points you were using during the day again, and maybe starting to push the car a little bit more than you would do in the night.
And indeed, Remco Major is still on his first set of tires. But can't speak anymore. The gap between Remco Major and Maximilian Dehn, it hasn't changed since the middle of the last lap.
No, they seem to be holding about the same pace right now.
In fact, Remco Major seems to be even gaining now, going through Hudson. Maybe fuel load is more decisive than tire life, or Remco Major has preserved his tires very well. He can make tires last fairly well, that's to be sure of. I mean,
yeah, he's been driving really smooth. He's not been pushing it too hard. So I'm sure he's been doing all he can. He seems to have had this strategy in mind from the beginning. So he's been adapting his driving style to suit a little bit, and seems to be trying to make the most out of what he's got. Although he's not done so much of the long racing, what we've seen on the streams. He does do a lot of long driving and testing, so he's probably one of the more experienced drivers when it comes to long stints in RENNSPORT.
Timothy Fritsch is in the pits now, though. And if my calculations are correct, he should make it to the finish line on certainty with this fuel. If he fueled to the brim.
I don't even think he'd need to brim it necessarily to get to the finish line from here. He's only got 57 minutes left. So he might have been able to leave a few litres out and save a bit of weight.
Of course, we lost some good names off this grid. Some very fast drivers. But we still have a fight for the win on our hands. We still have a lot of great names driving. And we still have a lot of changes that can happen to the championship standings.
Yeah, for sure. I know the gaps have kind of spread out a little bit more as the race has gone on, as they naturally would do. But with the way people have been pitting things, you're not quite sure what's going to happen until the end of the race. Like, a few of these are on very different strategies right now.
We're still expecting Remco Major to come in. We are not quite certain about Maximilian Dehn, if he can maybe make it on fuel or not. But even if he can make it, it will be quite interesting with the gap fluctuating on the same, like 49.6 seconds. Dominic Ladler is to come in. Eric Häusler is to come in. I think Pascal Jordan we haven't seen in. Timothy Fritsch we've just seen. And the two Audis probably have to refuel as well, but they have changed tires. I asked you at the start of this race, Tim. Who do you reckon will win this race? You, of course, went with our moderator colleague without any bias, Remco Major. Do you think that's still your way to go? Well, maybe that question has completely blown his mind, but it is looking very good for the Dutchman. But
I muted myself like an idiot. I was talking the entire time.
Oh, well. Maybe it has blown your mind.
It possibly did. Made me forget the mute button. But yeah, it's I was questioning whether Remco could do it or not at the beginning, but with the way his pit strategy is working out, I still don't know, to be honest. It's what he and Maximilian Dehn do in the pits is kind of anyone's guess at the minute now.
He's definitely not holding back, and well, as said, it will definitely be very interesting once Remco Major comes into the pits. And he's looking very good. He's in a very good position, you know?
He is, yeah. He's maintaining the gap pretty well back to Maximilian Dehn at the minute, and I think he's got as much. It's fairly kind of 50-50 between them at the minute to see how it's going to play out.
Last time we checked on his fuel level, he was able to maybe do another one.
Or
will he come into the pits?
I think he can do another lap. Yeah, it's. I can't quite remember.
Indeed, he stays out.
And he stays out.
Question answered. Just checking the last lap. an 8:05.444. That's pretty much what he did on his first quali one. Out of the two, the second one being an 8:03. The best lap times, by the way, between Maximilian Dehn and Remco Major. Maximilian Dehn on an 8:01.888, Remco Major on an 8:02.4. So both improved quite a bit on their quali times.
But there's still only 0.6 seconds between them, which is basically nothing at this kind of distance. Maximilian Dehn just about to cross the start-finish line, so we'll see what he did with his last lap. It was an 8:06.4. The gap between him and Remco Major has been pretty much 49.5 seconds. It's now 50 seconds. But it's kind of like fluctuated up and down a little bit as they hit the strong parts of the track.
I'm also having an eye on the fight behind them, because Eric Häusler, Dominik Ladler, 11 seconds apart, and Häusler seems to be a faster driver out of the two at the moment.
Yeah, I've been kind of keeping an eye on that one as it goes as well, because there is a, like you said, you kind of think 10 seconds, 11 seconds, that's a big gap, but there's an hour of racing left to go, and Häusler seems to have the pace on Dominik Ladler at the minute. We've still got roughly 7 laps left of the Nordschleife.
Lots of unanswered questions. Dominik Ladler now into the pits. That answers one of them. But as said, Eric Häusler, I'm sure will also have to come into the pits and does so as well right now. They separated by 11 seconds coming into the pits. I'll give you an update once they come out of it again.
Dominik Ladler right at the end of the pit lane. Häusler seemed to have a bit more car movement after he stopped, but not too bad.
There he comes out of the pits, Dominik Ladler. Clear order out of him. In the background, that was, I think, Work Liu who's coming in together with... That should be Pascal Jordan in front of Liu. Running in 5th. Timothy Fritsch, where is he? Now coming through Tiergarten. So he will reclaim 5th place from Pascal.
Gap between Häusler and Ladler seems to be about 11 seconds, so not pretty much the same as it was before.
What's interesting on the map is that we basically have 2 groups of 2 cars being somewhere out on the Nordschleife and the rest is on the Grand Prix course at the moment.
Yeah, there seems to be a bit of a kind of gaggle of cars on the Grand Prix circuit right now. And then a few stragglers, or leaders, depending which one you're looking at. The gap between Remco Major and Maximilian Dehn, and then from Dehn all the way down to Dominik Ladler is pretty huge.
I wonder what the pace difference would be when Remco Meyer comes into the pits and actually does change tires to Maximilian Dehn, as the fuel load should be roughly the same. Of course, you need the same fuel to finish the race.
Yeah, for sure. He'll just have 1 or 2 lap fresher tyres than Dean did.
Should be 3 laps, I think.
Did 3.
And that's quite a difference. I mean, 3 laps on the Nordschleife, that's 24 minutes.
Yeah.
That's nearly half a stint. You can see that he's feeling quite well on those tires still. I mean, the way he's throwing the car into it.
Yeah, he's not slowing down a lot, so I know he's obviously a lot slower than he was from his initial pace when he was on new tyres with 40 litres in, but yeah, he definitely seems to be in full control of his car, and after 9 laps of the Nordschleife, that's pretty impressive. He's really throwing a bit of a blinder with this pit strategy.
Also, if I see that correctly, Lucas Mint is slowly creeping up on Joachim Thunder. Not by much per lap, but I mean, we still have quite the distance to go. The gap is 19 seconds.
Yeah, he's slowly eating away at the gap. Like you say, there's 45 minutes left. About 7 laps left of the race, so he's got a long time, but if he can kind of maintain what he's doing, then psychology starts to come into play a little bit more. Lucas Min does have a 5-second penalty. I will add that. Joachim Thunder currently doesn't.
And Remco Meyer staying out yet again.
Let's hope he isn't going for his infamous Remco strat.
That would be a bit of a blow, but we will see. I mean, he has proven us wrong enough times in this, so
true.
Let's see.
Going for 10 laps of the Nordschleife on 1 tank of fuel. That would be an accolade. His last lap was 8:04.7, so that's pretty fast at this stage in the race, especially. Considering the length of this race, it's pretty impressive, I think, that Lucas Mind is the only one with a time penalty right now for track cutting. It's no mean feat on the Nordschleife, to be honest.
I mean, we've talked about it, I think, in another RFL race some time ago. For some people, me included, it's actually kind of easier on the Nordschleife to stay within track bounds, because of course there's not much behind the track bounds, so it's not like Spa where you have a curb and then a bit of runoff and you can go off the track. If you dip your wheel onto the grass on this track, there's grass, you know, there's not much else.
Yeah.
And those high raised curbs, while of course having the potential to be an absolute nightmare if you get stuck on them, if you ground your car on them and therefore spin out or something, they can actually help you stay in line as well. So you can
true.
lean on them to a certain extent and therefore avoid a track cut. But I mean, still, of course, concentration levels are going to drop at a certain stage.
Yeah, for sure. It's a lot to ask for these guys. Well, for most of them anyway. Probably aren't so used to doing races of this kind of length. On something like the Nordschleife, where you've got to concentrate so hard all the time, it's a lot of brain power to put in on a Friday night after a week at work.
Of course, also, don't be confused by the timing on the top of your timing tower on the top left. Kumail, of course, isn't driving since 1 minute and 56, but it's 101 or now 102 minutes. So we have 41.50 left to go.
Obviously finished with the pit stops for a little bit now. Just had, I think everyone's pitted who's going to. But let's see if anyone's gone for a 3-stop. They'll maybe be thinking about it soon.
I mean, the big pit stop to come is, of course, from Kumail.
Yes.
But there's still a few splash and dashes to be done by the 2 Audis, for instance. Häusler and Lala have done their pit stops. They will make it to the end without many issues. But the gap between Major and Dean has come down by just a bit.
Yeah, he started to eat into it a little bit, hasn't he? Maximilian Dean's last lap was also at 8:04, so he's obviously getting fairly similar paces they have done for the last couple of laps.
But Kumail seems to really struggle on his tires now.
Yeah,
Getting completely out of shape through the carousel.
There was a bit of an interesting counter steer going on then. He's fighting the car a lot more than he was earlier on, which you'd expect because he's on his 10th lap of the Nordschleife.
And the 13th on the tires, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, that's of course always the gamble you take, because you may feel like beginning the lap, since it's such a long lap, feeling like, okay, the tires feel good. Especially you have the Döttinger Höhe where the tires can cool down, you go through Tiergarten, feels good. And then you start the lap and there's no coming back from this. Like,
No.
you have to commit to it. And then you just notice, maybe the tires aren't that great. Maybe it's a strategy to think, okay, I will get those 3 seconds I lose now later on when I have fresher tires. Because Maximilian Dehn will have a similar effect as well.
Yeah.
But, yeah, of course, if you push it too far, you won't gain from those fresh tires.
No. Yeah, Maximilian Dean really kind of eating into Remco's time here. I wonder if he's having to do a bit of fuel saving as well to get to the end of the lap. Maybe pushed his strategy a lap too far. Well, he's not got too long to go now.
Joachim Thunder closing in on Pascal Jordan.
Yeah, Timothy Frisch seems to be losing time again to Eric Hausler. Like we were talking about that battle earlier on, getting quite close. But yeah, Joachim seems to be closing in pretty well on Pascal Jordan right now. Remco Mayor still going full throttle down the Dottinger, so he seems to be confident of the amount of gas that he's got left.
Here he comes into the pits. Where's Maximilian Dehn? Just on the Dottinger.
Those poor tires must be screaming to be changed right now. Got a long trip down the pit lane before he finds his box.
Maximilian Dehn now in Hohenrhein. Remco Mayer still up on the jacks. I think Maximilian Dehn will take the lead again.
I think he's gonna. He's still up on the jacks.
It's Maximilian Dehn back in the lead of this race.
Remco's down.
Remco Mayer now out of the pits. Let's wait for the gap to settle. 16 seconds between Maximilian Dehn and Remco Mayer. So he has regained, now without the tire difference really in the picture. 7 seconds, perhaps? 7-8 seconds from before the pit stops of these two?
I think so, yeah. Dean's last lap was 3.3, 8.3, so he's speeding up again. Now it's daylight, his car's getting a bit lighter, but Remco is going to be on very fresh tyres and shouldn't have too much fuel in the tanks. He's only got 35 minutes left of the race to go. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly he can get back up to race pace and if he can make any kind of inroads into that gap to Maximilian Dehn.
He has 35 minutes to do so. Who will be the next 2.4-hour race winner?
Eric Hausler and Dominic Ladler's last lap was virtually identical in time. They both had pit laps. But there's only 12 seconds between them on track right now. I'm waiting to see what the respective next laps are like. They're just coming down the Dottinger now.
Between Lucas Mint and Joachim Thunder has come down to 5 seconds. Okay, that was a mistake on my side. Between Jordan and Thunder, of course. But between Joachim Thunder and Lucas Mint, it's also just 20 seconds. But as I've just talked, Pascal John is beached on the curb in Hedwigshöhe.
Oh no!
We've talked about the curbs 20 minutes ago.
Yeah. Go, just give him a nudge. Give him a nudge. Oh, he's got moving.
I think Pascal
Go
John.
back over it.
And that's the deadly thing about those curves. They are so high you can actually beat a GT3 car on them. Maybe some people have seen beached cars, both in sim racing and real life, in the places like Laguna Seca Corkscrew, or in general, a lot of elevation change is in a sudden moment. But unfortunate for Pascal John, but he's still in the mix. He's still 9th.
Timothy Frisch and Eric Hausler doing really similar lap times right now, just 30 seconds apart. Neither of them particularly far off Dominic Ladler either. Felix Horn is doing an absolute rocket ship last lap. Really eating into that time to Timothy Frisch, but unfortunately I don't think he's got enough time for it to matter too much.
Gap is quite big between the two of them. But still coming into this race and now being 6th, I think is a very respectable position to be in.
But with just over 30 minutes of the race to go, just gone past the 32-minute mark and 15 seconds between Mayo and Dean, then Mayo's going to have to start really making some inroads into Dean's time. And Dean's last lap was quick. I don't know if he's got the pace to can make as much of an inroad into his time as he needs to.
Meanwhile, Lucas Mint has come into the pits for his final stop. But yeah, what do you say? Will it be enough? That will be the big question. He technically has to make up 1 second every 2 minutes. Roundabout to make up the time. And get a move done on the final Döttinger Höhe. So far, he has gained this lap about a second.
Yeah, I mean, if you kind of go by the idea of a second every 2 minutes, that's about 4 seconds on a dot in a lap. Nearly 5. And Dean's last lap was an 8:03, so unless Dean slows down a lot, Remco has to start doing really quick laps.
I mean, if I didn't miscalculate it, we have 4 laps left to go. Since we have 30 minutes left to go, a bit of track remaining, so of course you have to finish the final lap you drive. And this outlap now will kind of determine the pace and Remco Mayor's setting. How much pressure is he putting on Maximilian Dehn? Because right now he's gaining again quite a lot, half a second in the last 2 or 3 sectors.
He did, yeah. He flew through there.
So he definitely won't lose due to a lack of trying.
Oh, maybe trying a little too hard there.
Not what he needs right now. But certainly something that can happen to Maximilian Dehn as well. Maximilian Dehn is definitely under a lot more pressure than he was in the 2 other races he attended, that's for certain.
Yeah, for sure.
Giving him a good run for his money.
Dean's last lap was an 8:04, pretty much dead, so let's see what Remco Mayor makes. That was his out lap.
Yeah, screwed by the out lap. But I mean, he now finished this lap with 15.4, 15.3 seconds. When he came out of the pits, it was roughly 15.6, so that mistake coming out of the short carousel, small carousel, really...
Yeah, it definitely cost him.
So technically he now has to make around 3.5 to 4 seconds per lap.
Yeah.
That is a big ask.
Yeah, especially with the pace Dean's putting down right now. He'd have to be breaking into the 7-minute laps for the rest of the race.
Meanwhile, Dominik Ladler and Eric Häusler still 11 seconds apart. Just saying.
Yeah, their pace has been fairly even, to be honest. The kind of Ladler, Häusler, Frischd Horn train, even though there's a fairly big time gap between them, they're doing pretty much the same lap times. I wonder if any more of them are going to have a little pit stop before the race finishes.
I'm very curious about Maximilian Dehn. If he has to do another pit stop, then yeah, that would pretty much spell the end of his... But seeing how many laps Remco Major did on his fuel tank...
Yeah. He did put quite a lot of fuel on board. So I'm not sure he'd have to stop before the end of the race. But I can't see anymore, so I can't tell you exactly how much he's got left in the tank. So we're kind of going to be as much surprised as anybody else. We're just going to have to keep our eyes glued onto him every time he comes after Tiergarten and see what happens. Dominik Ladler is now 12.5 seconds ahead of Häusler. So he seems to be kind of... That gap seems to have kind of stabilized again. Ladler's last lap was a bit slower than his one before.
Meanwhile, the Lucas Mint support is still very much active. Just cool to see.
Timothy Frisch's last lap was very fast. It was almost 2 seconds faster than Häusler. Of course, there's a fairly sizable gap there of 30 seconds, so I don't think he's going to close that up in the next 24 minutes. But it was still an impressive lap time by him.
Can visually see where Remco Major is gaining the time on Maximilian Dehn. Because you can now see, if you take a look at the timer through the turns, especially when you have high lateral Gs. Of course, it makes sense with fresher rubber, but it's not the acceleration zones. The Porsche is always good in acceleration zones, even with used tires. But those high lateral Gs is really where Remco Major is gaining 10th through a corner. But then you have those long straights and nothing's really happening for the Dutchman.
Yeah, he's definitely giving it everything he's got right now. And it shows the gap is coming down. It's creeping lower and lower.
He already made it 2 seconds through this lap. So if he can gain another 2 in the following sectors, might be in with a good shot.
Dean's tyres are going to be going off slightly higher up the curve than Miles are, so his tyres are going to be getting worse and worse, and obviously Miles will as well, but they'll always be a little bit fresher. That extra about 30 minutes that he had before he changed tyres.
I also reckon they can finish this race in clean air. Lucas Mint is the next car up ahead, but he is pretty much 2 minutes ahead of the 2.
Yeah, I mean, Dean's relative is saying the next car up the track is 85 seconds. So, but that's a big gap to close in 22 minutes, even at the pace difference between the two.
Meanwhile,
so yeah,
Felix, I think Felix Horn took his pit stop because he's now down in 7th behind Joachim Thunder.
Yeah, his last lap was quite a lot slower than the ones he has been doing. Definitely not changing tyres territory, but it was a bit slower. So yeah, he's maybe just put a bit of extra fuel in to get him to the end of the race. Oh, and something's happened to Mayor, I think.
I think he spun in Galgenkopf. Or at least had a massive off-track.
Yeah, maybe he did. Maybe the same as something similar to last lap, but a bit worse. He's losing time, hand over fist, coming down Botting and all. He did get a purple sector 1 as well.
It's very unfortunate. So now it all comes down to, can Maximilian Dehn finish this race on his tank of fuel? There is 3 laps left to go, which is your typical GT3 series distance in a way.
Yeah. The Hausler-Ladler gap seems to be slowly coming down towards Hausler this lap. I don't know whether he's found a bit of extra pace from somewhere, because they were practically identical in the last lap, but he seems to be just squeezing a little bit more out of his Porsche tyres right now.
I mean, will it be a case of too little too late, or can Häusler make, let's say, the impossible possible? Because seeing Dominik Ladler make a mistake, I can't really see that coming. Okay, commentators curse and stuff, guilty, but Dominik Ladler on the Nordschleife has been so incredibly consistent with his car.
He has, yeah, and although he has been driving for the last 2 hours 20 minutes, he's been driving like clockwork and putting laps in, consistent timelines, consistently clean. So he's obviously got a bit of a rhythm going. Just got to maintain that concentration.
Well, let's hope these drivers will still have some energy tomorrow, because tomorrow evening, 8 p.m, we will have another race. Yes, we're doing 2 races on this week with a 2.4-hour race. Kind of crazy, but that's what we are. And yeah, we said it previously in the stream, it will be GT4s at Jeddah. High-speed track, cars with not so much downforce, but quite a lot of power. So it will be very interesting. We've seen the RCL Season 3 race, kicking off Season 3 there last week. How would you describe the race in maybe 1 or 2 sentences?
Well, I think it's going to be an interesting one there at Jeddah. I know from some of the public races there's quite a large difference in fuel consumption between the 2 GT4s, so there could be a bit of a strategic decision to be made.
Well, we will all see that next week, because we will have our first ever broadcasted Jeddah night race with GT4s, and we also have a small trailer for it. So we give you something to watch for the next minute, and until then, see you in a second. And there we are. May have typed in the wrong date there, but yeah, it will be tomorrow evening. I think GT4 class is one of the most action-packed we have.
Yeah, I've always really liked GT4 cars and racing. I'm a firm believer in the slower the car, the better the racing. I know some people hate you for it.
Well, I mean, you are correct. So, I mean, it's a difference between racing and driving, I think. For example, I personally don't watch Formula 1 because of the racing, because the racing in itself is... I mean, at the moment it's kind of good, but comparatively to a GT3 or TCR, GT4 race, it's kind of boring, I think. But the driving is very exciting. So you have those high power cars, high downforce, where the driving is spectacular, and then you have those low horsepower, low downforce car or GT3 cars, which somehow found the magic spot. That's also possibly why they are so popular. But those cars, which have, even though it's still fun to see them being driven fast, a lot of fun to watch them, but the racing is just incredible with them.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that one. I'm looking forward, again, some people are going to hate me for saying it, but I'm looking forward to seeing more low-powered cars in RENNSPORT. I know everyone wants to go out there and drive the hypercars and feel how stupidly fast they are. But for me, I'm really looking forward to the slow cars.
Hypercars I always, or in general, LMP1 was also a class I always really enjoyed, to be honest, in every way. But we know that this man, who's just drifted through the small carousel, is a big fan of low horsepower but high downforce cars, apparently.
Yeah.
So cars like the Praga, which we have in the game, and other cars, I think, like, he likes F4, if I'm not mistaken. The Radicals, they have various models, which are great. And
Yeah.
I mean, they are a lot of fun if you watch onboard videos and stuff from those cars. It looks like a lot of fun and would actually be something that would be very interesting to try at one day.
Yeah, I've done some track driving in other people's cars. Well, in other companies' cars, but I've never done any of the kind of really light, high downforce stuff. I think it'd be really interesting to try. Dominic Ladler, still on a fairly quick lap, but Eric Hausler seems to have really stepped up a gear now. The gap between them has come down almost 3 seconds in the last lap.
Could mix things up a bit, but still for the final spot on the podium.
Yeah.
Just trying to think of who finished Spa in Q3. I'll just try to look that up real quick. I mean, the first two podium positions are kind of obvious, but I think it was also Remco Major, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it might have been, yeah, because we had the esports people turning up to that one.
Indeed, it was Remco Major. Dominic Ladler in P4, just missing the podium. I'm sure he doesn't want that to happen again.
Well, at the minute, I've got Dominic Ladler being predicted about an 8-minute 11 lap, and Eric Hausler being predicted an 8-minute 8 lap. So if he can, and he did take 3 seconds out of Dominic Ladler last lap as well, so he seems to be fairly consistently doing that now. And if he can carry on doing it with 3 laps to go, that would put them pretty much bumper to bumper on the last lap.
I mean, they have 2 laps to go.
Remco Major and Maximilian Dean both doing 8:02 laps now. Their lap time's just getting quicker and quicker.
Of course, a few levels get lower.
Dominic Ladler having a little moment just coming back onto the GP circuit there, so it lost him a little bit of time. The gap between Hausler and Ladler is now less than 7 seconds.
Gap between Maximilian Dean and Major, as you said, the lap times were quite similar, but it's also not really changing on this lap as well. They're hovering at around 21.5 seconds.
Yeah, I can't imagine after 17 laps that Dean, his tyres are going to suddenly do something crazy. So again, it's all really down to whether or not he has got the fuel to do the required amount of laps. 8 minutes now, so I'm guessing they've got another lap to do after this one. So we'll put it on 19 laps to the finish.
I'm a bit curious if Joachim Thunder's going to have to pit again or not. His car colleague Felix Horn had to. Joachim Thunder looking at 2 more laps to go. And if he does so, will he come out in front of Felix Horn? He's not coming in this lap, so maybe he has enough fuel left.
Yeah, I'm guessing he knows that he'll probably have another 2 laps to go by this point, so... I don't know, what would you do? Would you carry on, or would you pit and get your fuel stop out of the way if you had to?
It's hard. It really depends on how well I am in the groove. You know, if I'm out of shape, I will probably pit, get something to drink real quick, so refuel myself. But if I'm in the groove with which Joachim Thunder really seems to be right now, try to carry on as long as possible. But in that moment, you really have to watch out that you don't lose your groove by overthinking the strategy, by thinking, okay, I'm gonna stay out because right now I'm in my mood, I'm in a rhythm, and then because you think a lot about that, you're not in the rhythm anymore, you know?
Yeah.
That's pretty much the worst thing that can happen.
Dominic Ladler seems to be answering a firing shot at Eric House right now, because he's a 2.5 seconds up on his own fastest time. So he's really trying to dash any hopes Eric Hausler has of catching him. Or he was, until he just did a bit of a sketchy wall riding move. Still on track, he's still ahead, but it's maybe the pressure getting to him a little bit there. Not so much this guy in the front though, Maximilian Dean, just doing a purple sector 9. 8:02.7 the lap time. It's pretty impressive. It's only a second off his best lap of the race. Remco Mayol's lap an 8:04, so he must have made some kind of mistake somewhere.
I mean, at this stage it probably doesn't matter too much.
No.
Since Maximilian didn't come in this lap, so he will be probably fine for the rest of the race.
Well, there is always that little thing of racer's pride.
It's way bigger than one might anticipate.
The Ladler to Hauser gap staying at pretty much 7 seconds now. Yeah, Dominic Ladler's definitely put his foot down and said, nope, this podium's mine.
I mean, it would be, I think, something that he would be very happy about after missing out so closely the last time.
Yeah. Dean and Muir just starting their last lap now, with 2 minutes left to go. This is going to be the last lap of the circuit. So they're both going to be probably just trying to maintain what they've got right now. You don't have to worry too much about everyone else, but I'm sure neither of them want to do anything too dangerous on the last lap.
But Häusler can see Dominic Ladler very well now on the dirty area. It's always a bit of a motivational boost as well.
Yeah, Dominic Ladler seems to have had a bit of an incident again towards the end of his lap. He's a second down on his best time, whereas before he was up on it throughout the entire lap. So he's lost some time somewhere, which is probably not what he wanted to be kind of showing Hausler that there was a chink in the armor there. Because the gap between Hausler and Ladler was 7 seconds pretty much the entire lap, and now it's less than 6.
Definitely be interesting between the two of them.
But it's still 5 seconds and 1 lap to go. Ladler doesn't have to do anything particularly special. He just has to keep it on the grey bit in the middle.
Maximilian Dehn, by the way, the second highest rated racer. Only topped by Nico Nüninghoff. But what I wanted to take a look at is the lap records for the Nordschleife, because some of the esport drivers, if they were in this race, Kaique Oliveira on an 8:01.9 in official records, where Maximilian Dehn has an 8:01.8. So
Yeah.
he's probably gonna take the record on this, which isn't the time trial. It is the leaderboard that tracks race laps and stuff. But if we had some of them in here, I think they wouldn't have had an easy time at any point.
No, Maximilian Dehn has definitely showed his mettle in this series. Has been pretty quick around the Nordschleife.
Meanwhile, Joachim Thunder now crossed the start-finish line, doesn't have to come in, so that will pretty much certify him as our 6th place driver. If you were Lucas Min now, after 2 hour and 2.4 hours or 2 hours 24 of driving, mathematics, would you wait for Maximilian Dehn to race one last lap, or would your racer's proud be in your head and tell you keep going, you can do that, do another lap, so you finish on the lead lap?
I've fallen foul of both of those, I've got to admit. I think it depends how I'm feeling driving and how happy I am doing it and how much I'm enjoying it at the time. I've had bad races where I've been feeling ugh, and I just want it to end. And I have waited for the leader to pass me, so I have to do one less lap. Or even his fuel. If his fuel's looking tight, maybe he wants to slow down and let Maximilian Dean pass him.
It doesn't seem like it. He seems to be enjoying himself very much. He has refueled. He's sending it down the Döttinger Höhe, so he will finish on the lead lap if it continues like that.
He's definitely doing his fastest lap of the race right now. He's nearly 6 seconds up on his personal best, so he's maybe happy to continue.
I mean, why wouldn't he? He has done a good race. Coming from further down the grid. Now in P9 against this stacked field. But Maximilian Dehn, his final one to the checkered flag across the Döttinger Höhe. He's pretty much the king of the ring at this stage. And he will do it again in the RENNSPORT Founders League. He will win the 2.4 hours of the Nordschleife, and he will be our RENNSPORT Founders League Season 1 champion. Congratulations to Maximilian Dehn.
It was a well-deserved win by Maximilian Dean there. It was an impressive race.
I mean, it was also very impressive by this one. Remco Meijer driving this amount of distance and only finishing 28 seconds behind Maximilian Dehn, who's won every race he's entered in AFL as well.
Not to mention 13 laps on the same set of tyres. A 10-lap stint. It was impressive going.
He had to do something different. He did it different, and unfortunately, it didn't quite work out. But it was such a good effort by Remco Meijer.
It was an impressive strategy call.
Between Ladler and Häusler, about 3 seconds.
Yeah, it's been steadily coming down. I just don't think it's coming down quite quick enough. I think if there'd been another lap in the race, then Häusler might have had him, but I'm just not sure. Dominic Ladler's done the sensible thing. He's not been pushing too hard. He's taking it a bit more within his stride this lap. Of course, they've got a few sections. Oh,
I think that was... Oh, and Pascal John just went past Felix Horn. And Felix Horn is out of fuel on the final lap. Stationary in Adenauer Forst. What a unfortunate way to end this race on his side. I don't think he will even be classified now. He will still gain points for the championship, but a heartbreaking finish to the race for him.
Yeah, that's one of those steering wheel banging moments, isn't it? You've put in 2 hours 24 of a race and then just not quite done it right.
I mean, it's bad for both parties, as in the position of Pascal Jordan, you are not sitting there saying, oh my god, yeah, I gained another position, but you're like, oh, right.
Yeah.
This is not how I wanted this position to gain.
Eric Häusler getting the gap to less than 3 seconds now, but he just lost about a second with his little grass tracking moment. He would have been agonizingly close, but I still think he wouldn't have quite managed to beat Ladler.
Ladler timed it right, and he will come across the start-finish line to fill out the final step on the podium. Maximilian Dehn, Remco Meijer, and Dominic Ladler will be our podium for today, and Eric Häusler in the position which Dominic Ladler was a few months ago at the first 2.4 hour race in P4, but still, what a performance. he's been up and down the field throughout. You gotta admit, he kind of jumped throughout the field. And Timothy Fritsch, he will have to settle for second in the championship. But I think he can be very happy. I think he also finished second in the first RCL season behind Dominic Lala, if I remember that correct, on the second one.
I think you might be right there.
So for him, I think he can be very happy with that result in the perspective of the league. Top 5 finish in one of the toughest races of the year. And Joachim Thunder, I mean, he started P14. I think he might be the one with the highest number of positions gained from a starting position.
Yeah, I think he will have been, with Ali Zahir. I think Ali Zahir would have taken the crown, but unfortunately, technical oops.
Technicalities. Well, racing consists of a lot of what ifs and if then not.
Looks like they're setting up a photo opportunity here.
Indeed.
Unfortunately, I'm not sure. We've got Dominic Ladler and Remco, but Maximilian Dean disappeared back to the pits.
Well, maybe Joachim Thunder will fill the void on the Döttinger Höhe through Antonius Bucher. Seems to be very elated by the homage to Tim Schroeder, the Tim Schroeder flash.
He knows he's going to be on camera. Just keep flashing the lights.
Lucas Mint actually also overtook Felix Horn because he was still on the lead lap. So it definitely was worth it for him to keep going. I wonder if Joachim Thunder will now park with Remco Major and Dominic Ladler.
I don't know. No, I think he's not noticed.
Doesn't seem like it.
Party at turn 1.
And Pascal Jordan, one of the rookies, I think a very strong performance here.
Yeah, for sure. It's been a good race for him. It's an impressive feat to finish the race, as well as in the position he has when he's definitely punched above his weight, shall we say, to use a boxing metaphor. Oh, Joachim Thunder went back to the pits.
My disappointment is immeasurable.
Oh, Pascal Jordan, he saw what was going on. Well, he's joined the photo opportunity at turn 1.
But Lucas Mint is going to be the last car over the finish line. But it will still be a P8 for him. And we can say all of our finishing cars stayed on the lead lap.
Yeah.
So that's it. That's your final results. Maximilian Dehn, Remco Major, Dominic Ladler, Eric Häusler, Timothy Fritsch, Joachim Thunder, Pascal Jordan, and Lucas Mint. Fortunately, lots of DNF, but in a 2.4-hour race on the toughest track on planet Earth. Okay, maybe alongside Bathurst, but that's a different topic. That is a very, very great result, and yeah, it has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been a good series. I've really enjoyed it. being here and casting it with you and getting to watch it all.
Maybe we can take a look at the standings while we are here. Because we know that Maximilian Dehn is our Season 1 champion, joining the likes of Dominic Ladler as champions. But we also want to see by which margin.
Oh, it might be interesting.
So the standings are still updating. But yeah, overall, what's your verdict on this season? We had the opening GT3 race with Maximilian Dehn running away from the competition, kind of.
Yeah, he definitely stamped his authority on the series from the very beginning with that first race out in the GT3s. He showed that he was pretty good on the Nordschleife. But it's been an exciting race, seeing where he went from there.
It seems like the league standings won't quite update right now. But we will get that running. And from my side, it's goodbye for today. We see you tomorrow at 8 p.m. on this Twitch channel, as well as on RENNSPORT as well. And yeah, Mr. Ireland, do you have any final words to say about today's?
No, I'm just glad to have been part of it. Thank you very much, Lena.
And with that said, I'd say see you next time around. Until then, have a great time and goodbye.
Goodbye.